Welcome back to Bluebird Territory presented by Miller Lite. I'm Mitch, joined with Kevin and Ricky as always. Fellas, I feel like we're talking about another series loss. It's been the last couple podcasts. We can get into kind of the general state of the union. We will talk about that later in this episode, but I think we should take flight today with what we just saw, which was Max Scherzer letting up 8 earned runs. He has not let up that many runs in a start in some time. He was dealing, after his last start, he told us he was dealing with some forearm tendonitis, and he claims it felt better after this start. Obviously, the command and the execution still weren't entirely there for him. I think it's kind of just very telling about the current state of the Jays rotation. Like they're asking guys, they're asking a 41-year-old who's not entirely healthy in his arm to go out there and start because they have so many guys injured. Ricky, we'll start with you. Where do you think the Jays go from here with Max and with this rotation in general?
Oh man, well, I mean, you got to continue to dodge the bullets, right? I mean, this team has had so much thrown at them, and with Max, we were texting about it last night, and just you have to wonder, all right, if is he hurt? Because if he is, you know, it's better for him to go on the IL, recover, and let's stop having these short outings where the bullpen's being hurt. So I get it though as a competitor, and Max is the ultimate competitor. He probably wants to take the ball every fifth day, and if he feels good enough to go out there, he's going to go out there. But I think at the end of the day, the Toronto Blue Jays have to do what's best for the team. And if he isn't right, I mean, because you're kind of sitting here wondering, like, and he says it. He said it. He goes, "I got to see how I'm going to feel tomorrow, and then the next day, and then the next day." And if there's still some lingering issues there, where he's like, "I can go out and pitch," but if he can go out and pitch, we're expecting him to be able to go out there and get us 15, 18 outs. And right now that isn't happening the last two innings or the last two outings. Obviously, one of them he left with the forearm injury, and then and yesterday you kind of sit there and wonder, is this lingering again? But he's not saying anything. What's the deal? So I think you just hope that he is fully healthy and he is being smart and the organization's being smart, because at the end of the day, these short outings are only hurting a bullpen that was tremendous this whole weekend. So yeah, I mean, it's tough. Again, he's a competitor and he wants to take the ball every fifth day. Everyone does when you're in that situation. But I think the organization has some questions to answer here.
Yeah, I mean, I hope for his sake, maybe it's injury, and it's hard for me to say this because he's a future Hall of Famer, but there's a chance that he just wasn't very good, his last two starts. And especially his last one, giving up the 8 runs, he didn't seem to have the same sort of bite on his pitches, the same command. And ultimately, that's going to happen. At some point, no matter how good you have been and how good maybe he was last year, at some point, there's going to be some regression. So at some point, all those innings that he's thrown is going to add up. And it's kind of unfortunate because he probably came into this situation wanting to come back with the Blue Jays, potentially being a six starter, being a guy that maybe could be piggybacked by someone, like a Savage maybe if he was healthy too. Now they're being asked for him to kind of be thrown into this kind of, hero sort of pitcher, slotting into potentially like the 3 spot in the rotation behind, Gosman and Cease. It's a little bit unfair to him, but they got some decisions to make because I don't think they have anyone better right now, kind of waiting in the wings. Hopefully with the off day today, him getting pushed back an extra day because of the off day, he doesn't need to be great. He just needs to be good. I think, and, on the point of Corbin too, he had a rough first inning too, but I think that's what they need Max Scherzer to be. I think they need him to be a little bit more Corbin right now. And, if you can leave the game after getting, 15, 18 outs, giving up 3 or 4 runs, you have to believe the offense is good enough to overcome that. They don't need him to go 8 and, give up no runs. They need them just to keep the team in the game, eat innings to not allow the bullpen to have to cover, 15 to 18 outs a game.
Yeah, I think that's the exact. The bullpen didn't let up a single run all weekend, and the Jays lost the series. I don't know how common that is, especially when your starters aren't going 8 or 9 innings in those games. Like the bullpen hauled a lot of innings, didn't let up a single run. You got to think when the offense starts clicking, if guys in the rotation can give them even like 4 1/3, 5 innings, if the bullpen holds it there, these are winnable games. They don't they're
Oh, the
not
bull
asking the rotation for a lot here.
The bullpen, I mean, if you just think about the three guys in the back of the bullpen, that 7, 8, 9 combo they have has been unbelievable. And then with Fluharty and Braden Fisher's been incredible this year too. Like you got a really nice thing in the bullpen. It's just you got to figure out a way on those not Cease and Gosman days. How can we get five from these guys so we're not taxing these guys? Because Ricky would know more than me, even though he wasn't a bullpen guy, but he understands the responsibility of the starters. And when the starters don't go deep in the game, how often the bullpen has to pitch. And that's just something that you can get away with early in the year because everyone's arms fresh. But when you start getting into late July, August, September, and then hopefully October, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and honestly, as a starter, you feel like shit when you don't get through 6, 7 innings. I think if you talk to any starter, their goal is to go complete game. I mean, that's the mindset you have to take in the big leagues. It's not always going to happen like that, but it just seemed like this series they were just hurt by one bad inning. It's not like they got hit around, hit around, hit around. It was one bad inning, bad crooked numbers, and it was just hard. It's hard to overcome that with when from the offensive side, right? I mean, yesterday, for example, Ernie Clement comes sets a tone, 1-0. You're like, all right, Max Scherzer has a great first inning. You're like, all right, here we go. Like this is good. And then boom, 7th spot. And it's like, whoa, what happened? And it just seems like this series was just all about that. It was just one bad inning. And once the bullpen took over, as you guys mentioned, I mean, they've just been tremendous. And I think it's just minimizing damage for these starters. I mean, Eric Lauer is another guy too, right? I mean, 2 bad starts, and I get it. He is sick and stuff like that. But man, if you're taking that ball, sick or not, you got to go out there and and try and get 15 outs. Try to get into the 5th, 6th inning, whatever it is. Because if this continues, it's only gonna make it easier for the organization to say when these guys are healthy, boom, they're slotting right in. And I mean, you never know. I mean, Eric Lauer can potentially be the odd man out if once Barrios and Savage and Beaver come back. So you just hope that they kind of get on a roll, pick it up, and get to the next series. I mean, there's nothing to dwell on now. It's just get to the next series. Let's go win a series out in Milwaukee.
Yep. And Savage doesn't sound like he's that far away. Ricky, we talked about it on our last show. He's going to start, I think it's either Tuesday or Wednesday. He could be in the big leagues next turn after that. So that's at least one reinforcement arm. Sounds like Barrios is maybe a week or two behind that. It's another reinforcement arm. Things can happen in the meantime. If this early J season is very telling, other stuff is going to happen in the meantime. But reinforcements are coming. There was another injury, George Springer as well. We'll talk about that later in the show on the other side of this quick break.
Baseball season is back, and it's a great time to drink a cold Miller Lite.
It's the perfect time to watch a game with some friends and drink a cold Miller Lite.
It's got that great taste, and it's just 90 calories in a 355 milliliter can. For all my fellow Canadians, Miller Lite is the official beer of baseball in Canada, so why not go grab some Miller Lites today? Because your game time is Miller time. Must be legal drinking age. Celebrate responsibly. All right, fellas, it hasn't been like the best vibes week in Blue Jays history. I think that's pretty clear. But nonetheless, we're going to do a Light Moments segment brought to you by Miller Lite. And I'm going to take this as an opportunity to plug one of my stories. Thank you for the time, but I do think this is a fun one. I think readers will really like this. I got to talk. I've been working on this one for like over a month now, talking with some players who played with Ernie Clement in college in 2015 at the University of Virginia, a team that went on to win the national championship. I talked to the manager, of course, talked to Ernie, and it was pretty fun to go to Ernie with these stories I'd picked up and get his reactions. He thought it was pretty hilarious. It's if you know Ernie, everything you saw in the postseason last year and watching last year's Blue Jays team, the kind of fun-loving, free spirit guy, this, I think, captures that in a really fun way. I would suggest going reading this story on The Athletic. And if you're looking for good vibes in a not good vibes week, I think this can bring them to you. So that has been our Light Moments segment. Why not go grab some Miller Lights today? Because game time is Miller time. Must be legal drinking age. Celebrate responsibly. Next, fellas, we're going to do a bit of like a general state of the union. Before we get to that, I think we should probably touch on George Springer's injury. It's a fractured left great toe, according to the team release. Not a big toe, a great toe, which I guess is just the big toe. It sounds like he is hoping to miss the minimum 10 days. I did go and look a couple years ago. Ozzie Albies with the Braves had a similar injury, missed exactly 10 days. Hunter Renfroe had a similar injury, missed exactly 10 days. Those are two guys that were playing the field too. So you got to think George, albeit he's a little older than those guys, could come back in a similar fashion, albeit all fractures are different. Like these things can be weird and different, but George is going to be out for at the very least the next 10 days. Kevin, we were talking earlier about kind of different options at the leadoff spot. You throw out Ernie Clement, first game without George Springer. Ernie Clement was hitting leadoff for the Blue Jays, and he had a couple knocks. How do you think the Jays are going to navigate these next few days without George?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see Ernie at the top, and I think maybe we talked about potentially shaking some things up until George gets going. And if Ernie does a good job in this leadoff spot, I imagine maybe he runs with it a little bit and allows George to kind of maybe slot in like that 5 hole a little bit, and maybe just allow himself to get going a little bit. But we talked about Eloy coming up, and Eloy making a name for himself in spring training, and comes in and has a great first game. And it'll be interesting to see what happens roster wise after 10 days. If Eloy goes up there and performs the way that he kind of did in spring training, and maybe the way we expect him to perform. But I think they don't call him up. So initially, when we talked about him going on the IL with the great toe injury, I was curious to know if Eloy was going to be the guy coming up, if they felt like it was going to be a minimum stay, because once Eloy is called up and George comes back, it's hard to send Eloy down because he's out of options, right? So initially, I thought maybe this is going to be a longer term stay, or maybe they're going to try to figure out a way that both of these guys coexist in the big leagues, which means someone else's roster spot is going to be taken. But I don't want to get too far ahead, but these are just kind of the things that I think about, now that I'm done playing. And I think Ricky could attest, as we are players, we kind of always, played fantasy GM a little bit too, because you've been in the game for so long and you've been around it. You try to figure out how all these moving parts kind of fit in. But, you know, great sign that a bunch of these guys, and I was going to try to reach out to Ozzy about it, but they had Sunday Night Baseball last night and just kind of see what the challenges were. I never had a foot or toe injury. I do know that the big toe is very important in terms of like stability and ground force and stuff, but a fracture could just be something in terms of just managing the pain a little bit early on, maybe getting a little bit of the swelling out. The fact that two guys, in recent history, both who played the field were able to come back and, feel confident doing it. I feel like George is going to be able to come back and, potentially at a great time for him too. You never want to see someone get hurt, but maybe just this little reset, couple days off mentally, then a couple days physically, he can just start getting in the cage and starting to get into a rhythm and getting his timing back and maybe tweak his swing a little bit. Maybe that's kind of the blessing in disguise is, a little mental break, a little clarity, a little time to kind of work on his swing. And in 10 days from now, he hits the ground running.
And didn't he say he was ready to take a second at bat too? So,
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
did.
it just tells you who George Springer is, right? I mean, he is, we talk about leaders and heartbeats of the team. He is that guy and that leader in that clubhouse. And I feel like everyone looks up to him. So when he goes down, it's like everyone just kind of goes into panic mode, quiet mode. And we've been in clubhouses, right, KP, where there's a big injury and the whole clubhouse is just silent. And just listening to him and his quotes saying that if it was later in the season and they were making a playoff push, he'd be in that lineup. So, it's smart, obviously, to take 10 days off. Obviously, Eloy Jimenez coming up, going 2 for 4 yesterday is a good sign. And, if he keeps hitting, there is going to be questions that are going to be, you're going to wonder those roster moves, what's going to happen when George comes back. And yeah, I mean, as KP mentioned, we can sit here and play GM all we want, but it is interesting to see what kind of moves they make. I mean, there is some guys struggling right now that if Eloy keeps hitting, how do you send him back down? So it'll be
Yeah, I
interesting.
mean, you see too, just when certain things happen in the lineup, whether you take a guy like Varsho and you actually move him up in the lineup in a position in Vladdy, and he's starting to swing the bat really well. Sometimes when you're that leader of the batting order, batting first, and things aren't going well, it's a tough spot to be. So maybe the opportunity for George to kind of slide down in that lineup, much like they kind of, it's almost reverse psychology a little bit. And obviously the position in the lineup hitting in front of Vladdy is, probably the best job in baseball right now, because you're going to get some pitches to hit. But it's amazing you took Varsho from like a 5 or 6 hitter and you put him into that 2 hole. He's starting to swing the bat better. So I would expect if Ernie continues to hit, you'll see him kind of slide down. And if Eloy continues to hit too, maybe he's that guy who starts slotting in behind Vladdy, because I know that's kind of the spot in the lineup that, the biggest hole's kind of been in right now. And maybe even too, once George gets going, maybe George kind of evolves into that guy who, has, especially with his experience as you get later in the season and you got to make a tough decision. Do we pitch around Vladdy? Do we go after him? When you have a guy like Okamoto who doesn't quite have the major league experience, it makes an easy choice on a manager. But when you got big game George Springer hitting behind Vladdy in these moments that are going to start really mattering, that could be an option too.
Yeah, we will see. Maybe future episode when like Barger starts coming back and guys like that, we have a fantasy GM episode. We try to suss these all out ourselves, but sounds like there is plenty on the bone there for sure. But we're gonna take that general kind of step back and look at where the Blue Jays are at now. This is going to be our Bet 365 deep dive for the episode. All right, fellas, I have the playoff odds for the Blue Jays right now. They are plus 110. That's this left column. I just grabbed the last couple teams on Bet365 this morning. Plus 110 to make the playoffs, minus 140 to miss the playoffs. That's still like fairly around 50-50. I believe the minus 140 is like 58% chance to not make it. Plus 110, it's like 45% chance to make it. So by no means have these odds moved that much. I'm sure the Jays were fairly big favorites to make the playoffs when the season opened, but like 45% chance to make it, still pretty decent, I think, in the betting odds. Ricky, we'll start with you. Like, this is a very injured team. Obviously, this is not the start they wanted. What do you think, aside from just kind of like staying the course and showing up every day, this team needs to go right in the next few months for them to get back in the playoff mix?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned it before. It's going out and winning series. You look at the AL East standings, and I'm looking at them right now. The first place team is 8-7. The Yankees are 8-7 as well. Tampa, Yankees have hit a little bit of a tough streak right there. So it happens to these good teams that we're expecting to see dominate certain divisions. And for the Blue Jays, I feel like it's a word that's getting thrown out a lot. It's staying afloat. And if they're able to do that and continue to just, hey, let's just go out there, put up good games. Let's get the best out of our starters. Give our team a chance to win. As a starter, that's your mentality. Give the team a best chance to win and just win serious. I mean, a sweep is always good, but if you continue to just go out there and stay the course and just, as much as you can, continue dodging these injuries that they've been thrown at them early, I don't think any team's dealing with these type of injuries. So the AL East is still up for grabs. Nothing's, like, I'll say it again, nothing's been won, nothing's been lost. So if this team continues to just go out there, and we haven't even touched the surface on how great of a baseball team this team can be. I don't even think they've had their full starters since the first series. So 6-9 right now, 2 games back. I still like their odds. I don't think anybody in this division is when healthy is as good as the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, I'm just looking at their upcoming schedule. Milwaukee, Arizona, Angels have been playing good. Cleveland, Boston, Minnesota, Tampa, Angels again, Tampa, Detroit, New York, Pittsburgh, Miami, Baltimore. Then you get into June, you got Atlanta, Baltimore, Philly, New York, Boston, Chicago, Houston, Texas, and then the Mets. I keep going into July. Then you got the Mariners, Giants, Padres, All-Star break. Like, they're hitting a very tough stretch of their schedule, and you can't go back in time. They did have a little bit of an easier schedule that they didn't take advantage of, and obviously the injuries just stacked up, right? We can't go back, but I think it's just really important for them to not to overuse that word, but just stay afloat through all the injuries as they're starting to get guys back. I'm a numbers guy, and it took me a long time to kind of realize this when I was playing, because and I don't want to. Who was who was the GM that came out, got in trouble and said, "Oh, we're just trying to win like 54%
Oh,
of our games,"
the
right?
Mariners GM. Yeah.
The Mariners GM. Oh, yeah, Dipoto, right? But I understand really what he's saying. Yes, we try to go out and win every game, but since I'm a numbers guy, if you win 8 more games than you lose during the season, you win 90 games. Like that's the ultimate goal. You win 10, you win 92 games. That's a pretty guaranteed, playoff position, especially with the expanded playoffs. So if the Blue Jays could kind of just stay around 500, until that All-Star break and then they really get healthy, down the stretch, you really have to win, 10 more games than you lose. And that's, maybe winning 5 more games a month than you lose, and then you look up at the end of the year, you got 92 wins. They're in a really good position to maybe even win the division, if not, pretty much guarantee themselves in a playoff. So with everything they have in front of them with this kind of gauntlet of a schedule, they just got to stay afloat, continue to show up, continue to compete. It's hard to understand it and feel it in the moment, but what's happening to the Blue Jays right now is they're just building tough skin, they're building character, they're dealing with adversity, and if they can kind of get through all this, it feels like everything is stacked against them right now. And if they're able to just go out and like Ricky said, maybe win some series, split some series, really just not get swept and just continue to kind of climb back towards that 500 mark. If they can get to a game below or a game above or somewhere in that ballpark around the All-Star break, and then you start getting, guys going, you start getting Bieber back, you start getting your Savage fully healthy, you get a Barrios back. That's when they go on their run, and also to Ricky's point, everything, and obviously we cover the team. I don't know what it's like in New York right now, but you're just in the general landscape of baseball. The Yankees got off to a great start. We're like, here we go, the Yankees. And then you see they hit their tough stretch. They've lost 7 in a row, too. No one's really blinking an eye at it because they still have a winning record. The Blue Jays just happen to get off to a bad start. So everything's really magnified. But let's hope, nothing else worse can happen to this team in terms of like losing players and injuries and all that stuff. And they can kind of get through this tough stretch and get to the All-Star break and then kind of hit the ground running.
And Vladdy said it best. This ain't a basketball team, right, where one guy can take over. Everyone has to do their part. And when we've seen this team be at their best, everyone's doing their part. Everyone's chipping in whatever way they can to get these wins. So it's just 1 through 9 being a tough lineup. I think last year the theme was it was a hard team to strike out. Well, we have to get back to that, get on base, little things, make big things happen. And kind of like the Minnesota Twins: base hit, big home run, base hit, big home run. And I think that they played a little bit of Blue Jay baseball, I felt like. So I think it's just getting back to that. You're facing a Milwaukee team who's also on a bad losing streak right now. So again, it's just going out there, as cliche as it sounds, and I've heard this a million times. KP has heard this a million times. Mitch, I'm sure pitchers have told you this a million times. It's one pitch at a time, and just going out there, winning one pitch, and then just letting it carry over from to the next pitch, to the next inning, and then winning a game, getting to the next game.
And to your point, Ricky, about one guy not being able to take over, but that's where the pitching and the hitting is so kind of intertwined too. When you're a team that's not really swinging the bat all that well, and your starting pitchers are going out there and giving up runs early, you kind of lose your identity of who we are as an offense. Hey, let's
Yeah.
get guys on, let's be tough outs. That's a lot easier when your pitching staff is throwing up zeros early in the game, and you could kind of navigate that game like, hey, let's get a runner on, let's move them over, base hit, we're up 1-0. And in that first game of the Twin series, you saw them, give up a ton of runs early in the game, and they started kind of, it was so familiar of, the season last year. They got down, they started chipping away, they got the big hits, they got the home runs, and then they went on this stretch, and you're like, okay, that is exactly what this offense needed. They came back, they played Blue Jay baseball, and then going into game 2, you started seeing the signs, but then, it just was too much to overcome with, the lack of being able to get outs early in the game and spotting the team other runs. It makes it a little bit easier, when you can go out there and try to chase one run an inning as opposed to like, hey, feeling like we need to score 4 or 5. That's when
Yeah.
they kind of get out of characteristic and they start kind of trying to do more than they're supposed to. Last year, I think they were really fortunate with the starting pitching they had that was always keeping them in games that they felt like they could just chip away. Now it feels like they're trying to, knock down this tree with one swing when their MO has always just been like, hey, let's just score one an inning and maybe, like the Twins did. You get a single, someone pops a home run. Oh man, we just put up a crooked number, but it feels like they're chasing crooked numbers from the first inning.
Yeah, it's true.
Definitely. I did like the Vladdy basketball quote because he was at the Raptors game like the night before. I just like the idea that Vladdy's like, what metaphor should I use? What have I done lately? And then just like plugging that in. If he uses like a, I don't know, going swimming metaphor, we know he went to the pool on his off day on Monday coming up. But we'll see. We'll find out in Milwaukee what metaphors Vladdy is using next. Do you guys, actually, I'll just close out this Bet365 deep dive first. Baseball fans, there's nothing better than a day at the ballpark because there's nothing worse than waiting in long lines around the ballpark. That's why Bet365 has a 5-run early payout. When the team you're riding goes up 5 runs at any point in the game, they'll pay your bet out right then and there, win or lose. No waiting required. Besides, the earlier you get paid, the earlier you can go back for another hot dog. Bet365, download the app and see what early payouts all about. Must be 19 or older, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has concerns about gambling, visit ConnexOntario.ca. Terms and conditions apply. Fellas, just before we get out of here, the matchups for this Brewers series, it's Corbin, Gosman, and Cease for the Jays facing Jacob Mizorowski versus to be announced for the Milwaukee Brewers. Anyone got any kind of takes about this? I know this was an interesting matchup last year. I was kind of hoping these teams would meet in the World Series because they were particularly similar teams, high contact, really played good defense, both with kind of upstart managers who went on to get extended. Is there anything either of you guys want to talk about this series before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the similarities of the teams, and I think two teams kind of struggling, two teams that are coming off, unbelievable seasons last year, winning the division. Correct me if I'm wrong. Each team had both the best record in the NL and AL, right? Maybe for both of these teams, this is kind of the series that they need. Iron sharpens iron. Maybe it's they're playing similar styles of baseball. Maybe it rubs off on each other. Ultimately, someone's going to have to win the series, but let's hope that they play good, clean baseball. And this is kind of a jump start for both of these teams to kind of get back to their identities. Hopefully it's like a looking in the mirror sort of kind of moment for each team. Like, oh, you guys were good last year. We were good last year. We played this style of baseball. You play this style of baseball. Let's let it come out. And, as Ricky knows, sometimes, and this not to take away from obviously everything that's happened with the Blue Jays with injuries, and it sounds like an excuse, but it's a legitimate thing. They've lost so many players early in the season, the illness and stuff too. But let's hope the level of competition allows the Blue Jays to raise their level of competition. It feels like they've kind of just been playing down at their competition, hoping that talent would eventually just kind of take over, and it hasn't yet. So I hope they kind of raise their bar a little bit of playing a team like Milwaukee.
To me, you got two out of your two horses going in the first 2 games, and that's big. And I think they set the tone for everything else. And obviously, Mizorowski is not no easy task, but it's a good challenge for this lineup. And Kevin Gosman can tow it up with the best. So I think he sets the tone early, and hopefully it carries on to Dylan Cease. Dylan obviously has had a couple of rough starts the last 2 starts. Or I wouldn't say rough, but it hasn't looked like he did his first start. So they have a chance to set the tone, those 2 guys, and then just kind of carry it from there. And if I'm not mistaken, KP Milwaukee is a hitter-friendly ballpark, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it historically has
Yeah.
been known as a hitter-friendly ballpark, and obviously, with the roof being closed, the conditions are going to be nice. Milwaukee can be very cold this time of year, but yeah, it's a place that, as a hitter, it's one of those stadiums you have circled on your calendar. Like, hey, man, if I need to get going here because the ball flies.
There you go. And I think that can be big for this Blue Jays lineup. Something that, hey, it's a hitter's ballpark. Let's get our good pitches to hit, and good things are going to happen. So I hope this offense gets going. I hope everything just comes together this series here with their 2 horses going in the first 2 games, and then just kind of carries on into the rest of this road trip.
Yeah, also sometimes just getting out on the road too is, and I know every Blue Jay loves playing at home because the atmosphere, but sometimes you get a chance to get away from family and your wife and your kids and the home environment. You get on the road, it really becomes kind of like this, bonding thing with the team. You hang out in hotel rooms. These guys love playing video games now. They get a chance to play with video games with each other, go out, do whatever they do. Ride the bus to the field together. Sometimes road trips are what struggling teams need because there's this bonding element. Obviously, an off day, they're probably traveling on this off day to there, have a couple of drinks, play some cards on the plane, get the vibes going a little bit. And you go in, to a series like this, go take care of business, hop on the bird, go to another city, kind of rinse and repeat. And the next thing you got a ton of momentum coming back home.
Yep, maybe a big flight for the self-proclaimed card shark Miles Straw of the Blue Jays. We'll see if he can win some money and spark the team on this road trip. It is a long road trip. I think setting the tone. You're right, Ricky, with those two horses is really important. And then this road trip kind of sets the tone for that stretch of seemed like 25 really good teams that Kevin was rattling off earlier. So this is a potential big swing for the Blue Jays, even though still a lot of baseball left. 147 games left. We're going to be here for it all, talking about it on Bluebird territory. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode.